Hello again. Welcome in. This is another edition of our video podcast from WVSports.com. Musings from the Mountains. I'm managing editor of the site, Keenan Cummings.
And I'm staff writer of the site, Patrick Kotnik.
We're going to discuss what you all want to discuss this week. West Virginia is going to play host to Iowa State. Interesting matchup. Iowa State came into the season with a lot of expectations. West Virginia, obviously, a lot of unknowns. Both teams share a 3-2 record at this point. I think that's probably a little surprising to some people. Iowa State has been up and down, more up than down recently. They've lost 2 games by a combined 3 points. Pretty good football team. What's your assessment, Patrick?
I mean, let's just talk about Iowa State. Has always been a tough opponent for West Virginia. We saw what the Cyclones did to the Mountaineers last season, holding Will Greer to, I believe, was just 100 passing yards in that game. It's going to be another tough test for West Virginia. Iowa State is a good team. Like Keenan said, up and down. But they have a great head coach in Matt Campbell. It's certainly going to be a challenge for the Mountaineers on Saturday at home.
Yeah, series 5-2 in favor of West Virginia. Game's going to be played at 4 o'clock on ESPN for those wanting to watch on television. Iowa State's been getting it done. In the month of October since 2017, they're 8-0. That includes beating West Virginia 30-14 last year. You look at this team offensively, it starts and stops with Brock Purdy. And he's been pretty good, to quote the pun. I think that the thing that has made him really stand out is he's a true dual threat. He can run, he can pass, he can make things happen with his arms, his legs. They didn't ask him to run as much earlier in the year, and their offense kind of struggled for that. They've opened it up. They really had more design runs against TCU. He had almost 100 yards rushing on design runs against the Horned Frogs and really opened things up. They throttled TCU, Patrick.
Yeah, he did run for over 100 yards for the first time in his career. Anytime you have a dual threat quarterback, that just presents just a lot of challenges for a defense. Not only do you have to worry about their receivers, you have to worry about what the quarterback's looking at, but you also have to worry about containing them. Letting them not get the edge, not letting them not give up the pocket, and then having them find empty space between the offensive line and run downfield. There's a lot of challenges that come with it. I feel like West Virginia will definitely have their hands full with Purdy.
Yeah, he's a sophomore. He's already the career leader at Iowa State in completion percentage, passing efficiency, and he's tied for most 300-yard games. Sophomore. Guy's probably played, 13, 14 games already?
His first start was against West Virginia.
Yeah, so he's made his name early. I mentioned his running ability. They used him more in design runs, which I think is interesting because it's sort of the opposite of what you saw last week. I think 165 of his 200-some rushing yards have come on design plays. That means West Virginia's old friend with Skylar Howard, quarterback power. Some of those design plays, the lead plays. It'll be interesting to see how West Virginia accounts for that. They use a lot of running backs to help Purdy. They have 5 different guys that have carries this year. Johnny Lang is the guy that's really emerged here of late. They can make people miss. They have 21 forced missed tackles between them. And I think it'll be interesting to see who gets used where because they have been rotating those guys in and out. I think 4 of them have over 15 carries this year already. The lead guy, I think, has 39 carries. So they're going to use a lot of guys.
Yeah, and just this offense in general, they can show a lot of things, Not only do they want to run the ball, but, they can pass it too. They can line up anywhere from an empty backfield. They can show 5 wide receivers. They can even use, 1 or 2, even 3 tight ends. This offense can show a lot of different things, and this offense has shown that they've been pretty efficient this entire season so far with Purdy, at the reins of the control.
Absolutely. Efficiency is the name of the game. They have 2 3-and-outs all year. Average 7.1 yards per play. They get things done. They get in the red zone. They usually score touchdowns. They're 22 for 23 when they get down there, and they have 16 of those are touchdowns. So they're not kicking field goals for the most part. They're catching in with scores. When they do throw the ball, this isn't as much of a chunk passing offense as it was a year ago. They will throw it between 10 to 20 yards. Not as much deep stuff with Akeem Butler going on to the NFL. Their main target, it's a lot like last week with Texas. Usually when Brock Purdy's throwing the ball, he's trying to find Deshaunte Jones. He has a 27% target share of his completions this year. Catches the ball. He's a yards after catch guy, another yak guy. They're going to get him the ball in a lot of different ways, a lot of quick ways. And then they got some really talented tight ends. I think that's going to be one of the more interesting matchups to me. is how does West Virginia defend their tight ends, especially with their size?
Well, especially too, we saw how much of a factor Hakeem Butler was last season against West Virginia. I know it's obviously two different coaching staffs, but Butler did have 6 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown against West Virginia. So it'll be interesting to see not only wide receivers what impact they could have, but also the tight ends how well they can fare defending the tight end.
Yeah, sophomore Charlie Kohler has 20 catches, and most of those come in the middle of the field. They'll use him kind of down the seam. They'll stretch. 16 of his catches have come right in between the numbers. So they're going to try to exploit that and take advantage of that. That's something I think West Virginia has to find a way to account for. Defensively is where most people usually talk about this team, which is surprising given all the numbers we just rattled off offensively. But it's the style of defense they played. Since 2017, since they've moved to this umbrella-style defense that they do, they've caused a lot of problems for teams in the Big 12, Pat.
Yeah, they have. Their defense have only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns all year, which is 11th in the country. You look at the struggles that West Virginia has had running the ball. Now, they did have a couple games there against NC State and against Kansas, where back-to-back weeks they had season highs in rushing. Took a little bit of a step back against Texas, but Iowa State, they're really solid there, right in the center with their defensive front, and especially with some of their backers. They're going to be interesting to see, whether or not West Virginia can get the run game going. Obviously, that seems to be, a key point for West Virginia in every week is can they get the run game going and can they stop the run?
I thought the stat that kind of blew me away with them defensively is in their last 27 games, they've only allowed more than 24 points 5 times. None of those have been West Virginia. I know it's a different coaching staff, but they're very stingy, especially in the fourth quarter. Give up around 4 or 5 points a game.
Well, especially in the first quarter, too. They haven't allowed a first quarter touchdown all season. In fact, they've only given up 3 points in first quarters all year up to this point.
Yeah, they're not too aggressive. They blitz around 30% of the time. The total number for the season is 36, but that's skewed a little bit because of what they did against Baylor, trying to come back, trying to heat them up a little bit. So they're not overly aggressive. What they do and what's so tricky about their defense is they play with 3 high safeties. It looks like a light box at all times. It looks favorable to run into, but they can get into so many different things with it. And the position that's hard to stop is that star linebacker / safety position, because he's coming from such depth that often he can get to the ball carrier and it's hard to block him.
And we mentioned too yesterday during after Tuesday's media session that their defensive linemen have the same role that the defensive linemen and Tony Gibson's defense did for West Virginia, where they're there to eat up blocks, take up space, occupy some of the offensive linemen. That way it frees up the linebackers to make those tackles. How do you go about stopping that? I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit here, but Matt Moore says you got to get hats on hats.
Yeah, it starts down the middle for them. It's Ray Lima at the nose guard, Ryan Vance, their middle linebacker, and then, of course, the star Greg Eisworth. I think those are the 3 key players for them. You got to find a way to block them, or if you get into one-on-one situations, you got to make guys miss tackles. It starts with establishing the run. You got to be able to establish the run. That's something that West Virginia was not able to do in this game a year ago. Put them behind the sticks, led to Will Greer running around so often trying to throw into deep coverage when there just was nothing there. I think it's a horror movie that plays for West Virginia fans. You could put that on instead of a horror movie in October to go back and think about how uncomfortable that game was for the West Virginia offense. But new scheme, new coaching staff. I think it'll be interesting to see how they attack it. If one thing that I've seen through Neil Brown's tenure so far, they make really good adjustments. And this is something they've been looking at since the summer. I don't think it's going to surprise them. I think they're going to have a plan for it. It's nothing that can't be beat. Obviously, Iowa State's lost some games during this. It's going to be about being efficient, though. You can't turn the ball over 4 times again.
Well, I feel like Iowa State every year, not last year, but I want to say 2 years ago and the year before that, it's always a big response game for West Virginia. I think it was 2 years ago they allowed West Virginia, they just came off of a loss where they allowed 50 points to Oklahoma State at home. Next week they were playing an Iowa State team that was fresh off, not fresh off, but that season they beat Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma. So really big response game for West Virginia in this game against Iowa State at home.
Yeah, it's a big game. Both teams are 3-2. If West Virginia realistically, you might think it's a stretch to say compete for the conference, but it's still open in a sense. If West Virginia realistically wants to stay afloat, they've got to try to win these games at home because it doesn't get any easier when you get on the road. We'll give you predictions at the end as always, but we'll take your questions.
You ready?
Yep, I'm ready. We're gonna just wing these. We collected your questions and we're gonna answer them to our best ability.
All right, starting off here, special teams. Does Evan Staley face any competition during practice?
Well, yeah, I think obviously he does, but it's not good enough. I think clearly right now, college football is pretty simple, guys. I don't see a coach playing a guy that they don't think is their best option. It's simple as that. I think Staley's had some issues kicking. I think more of that is just execution mental. He's proven that he can handle that job in the past.
Shown that last year.
Yeah, he showed it last year when he was elevated into that role. So I think that it's more about just him figuring it out. And that stuff rolls downhill sometimes. A couple missed kicks, a couple kicks you should have made, it becomes a mental thing. And that's when you start to worry about it. Is it to that point? I don't think so. I think Neil Brown has expressed confidence. He continues to trot him out there. If he continues to miss kicks, though, then you might have to look at another option.
I mean, it may take, here in the future, just, him hitting like a 45-yarder or even like a 50-yarder, get that one big kick out of the way that you can make, maybe to stem some confidence, get his confidence back up a little bit. But like you said, Keenan, it's a great point. You miss some kicks like that, it's mental. So be interested to see how he does moving forward. Next question here is Letty Brown being underutilized?
It's an interesting question. I think you can make the argument, yes. But who do you take out at this point? With the way they're using the running backs, they've utilized Keenan McCoy. I think he's a superior pass catcher, so I don't think you want to take him off the field. I think if you're taking anybody's snaps, it's Martell Pettaway, and he hasn't had a great share recently. I think they have been using Brown more in that bulldozer, that closer type role that he has success with. It does look different, I will admit. When he's in the game, it looks different. He runs harder, he breaks tackles. He's giving you what you want, but I think you hurt yourself if you scale back and take away more from Kennedy McCoy because he adds that explosive element that Letty doesn't really add.
And you really got to keep, I feel like to kind of throw opposing defense off, you got to keep, playing more than one guy. Obviously, you can play Kennedy McCoy, who can give you that advantage, not only on the ground in between tackles, but he can also, catch the ball out of the backfield. But you can also use Letty Brown, in power situations.
And you don't want to tip your hand either. A lot of it is not showing. You don't want Letty Brown in the game every time you're going to run power. You don't want Ken McCoy in the game every time you're going to throw it to him.
And that's something that Chad Scott said before the season, that each of those guys had to be efficient in everything they do, whether it's blocking, catching the ball in the backfield, running the ball itself. Each of those guys has to be efficient in everything that they do, because he said if one's a better power back than the other, you get into third and one situation, fourth and one situation, you bring in that guy, everyone knows defense. Chances are that ball's going to him.
Yeah, opponents watch tape too. I think the positive here, though, is we're talking about positives in the run game. Everyone remembers after the first two, they averaged 1.1 yards per carry. So definitely things are getting better there.
Next question here on the defensive side of the ball. What were first impressions of Vandarius Cowan?
What I thought. I think I even took, I wouldn't call it heat, but some people kind of questioned me when I said I thought Quandarius Qualls would play more. I thought he would be productive, and he was. Actually graded out higher than Vandarius Cowan according to Pro Football Focus. But what he did do is allowed him to be more efficient. And what I mean by that is having Vandarius to kind of steal some of those snaps, get him in the game, kept Qualls fresh, and both of them were more productive as a whole. Last week they got 2 sacks out of that position, and they hadn't had a sack all year. They had 2.5 tackles for loss. They had a half a tackle for loss all year. So I think you got more production there, and that's what you want.
And he said he graded ahead of Quandarius?
Yeah. Wow. Well, Quandarius graded ahead of him.
Oh, great. Quandarius. Okay, gotcha. I think, I've said before that, kind of a natural fit for that abandoned position. They can get, more, continue to be productive. He said that, they got a couple sacks out of that position last week. Get him some more snaps moving forward. Obviously, you can have a pretty good advantage there with those two guys at that position. Next question here on the offensive side of the ball. Tevin Bush, still in the doghouse or getting beat out at practice?
A little bit both. I don't know doghouse is the correct word, but he's been banged up is how Neil Brown said it. They wanted to go bigger against Texas, and obviously when you want to go bigger, playing a guy that's 5'6" is probably not your best option. So I think it's a matter of he needs to be more consistent, obviously. He needs to get healthy from this nagging injury. And he needs to beat out Winston Wright because Winston Wright has played well in that spot.
And you got to think that, this young receivers group, they're going to get more chances, especially this weekend. We don't know the status of Sam James yet. I know Neil Brown said on his show Thursday he might have more of an update. They lost Sean Ryan for at least a couple of games, as Neil Brown put it. Had surgery Tuesday morning on an upper body injury. This is a young group that's going to get some more chances, but whether Tevin Bush can, maybe emerge over Winston Wright, that kind of remains to be seen.
Somebody's got to catch passes. It's simple as that. Somebody's got to find a way to catch them.
On the recruiting side of things, one trait you think West Virginia staff is trying to recruit here that West Virginia doesn't have right now?
Easy answer here, length. I don't think West Virginia has nearly enough length defensively. And when I say length, I mean guys that look like Vandarius Cowan. He just looks different. He's tall, he's long, he can make plays. That's what West Virginia wants to get, especially at that bandit spot. That's the archetype, that's the body type they want there. They want longer, more rangier safeties, more longer corners. Keith Washington kind of is in the mold of what they want, those 6'1", 6'2" guys with long arms that can do a lot of things. So length is my answer.
Spot on, rivals Keenan. Next question here. As far as wide receivers go, why so few targets for West Virginia's tight ends and George Campbell, wide receiver?
Well, I mean, Campbell, it's a product of him not playing as much. He just isn't in on a lot of snaps. As for tight ends, that one has kind of surprised me. I don't necessarily have an answer. I thought earlier in the year it was more due to them holding some stuff back. Then I kind of thought it was maybe guys weren't being consistent enough to get on the field. But they did throw it more. I mean, they did triple their tight end targets against Texas. It wasn't for a bunch of yards. It was 13 yards, I believe. But 3 passes to the tight end, 4 if you count the interception that was intended for Michael Laughlin. So it is being used more, but it's not as explosive as maybe you expected after what happened initially last year when that became a thing and Trevon Wesco was affecting games.
Well, the tight end position, that wasn't something that Neil Brown really utilized a lot at Troy. Right?
No, he didn't. But a lot of that, too, is because it's hard to recruit those guys at the group of 5 level. It's hard to recruit those big athletic guys that can really change games like you can find at the Power 5 level. I think it gets better. I do think it gets better. I don't think it's a situation where you're going to force feed the ball, but it'll come. I think it's something that's going to come over time.
Now, going back to the Texas game here, what do you think about West Virginia's clock management at the end of the first half? That was the end of the first half when Evans Daly missed a field goal there.
Well, I think it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And what I mean by that is the coaches talked about this as well. On 2 separate occasions, Austin Kendall had a seam route he could have hit, and one time he opted to check it down, and one time he opted to take off and scramble. Had he thrown either of those passes and connected, they would have probably been around the 20-yard line instead of midfield with around 25 seconds to go and a timeout in your pocket. So I don't think it was called that way. I think they tried to milk the clock a little bit, but then when it was time to go, Kendall just missed on what could have been a big play to set them up in scoring position.
Yeah, I really feel like there was more focus on not leaving enough time for Texas to go down the field. Because I'm not sure if Texas still had a timeout or something in their pocket, maybe more. But Texas also got the ball, start out the second half. So I could see why, you want to milk the clock as much as you can, just so Texas doesn't have a chance to get points and then come out in the second half, opening drive, and then get more points. But you said a couple missed opportunities there for West Virginia. Sticking with the offensive side of the ball, can't talk. After seeing West Virginia's offense for 5 games, what is their identity?
That's a really good question. And that one, I don't even know if I can answer it right now because there's got so many guys coming in and out of the lineup every week. I mean, you feel like you got something working and then somebody gets hurt or somebody takes a step back. I think the easiest way to describe it is they're going to take what you give them. They've been a little bit creative. I've been impressed with the way they've been able to adjust and show some new things week to week. Look at the offense from Missouri to NC State. It doesn't even look like the same offense at time. A lot more motion, a lot more things to get the defense moving. And then you get to Texas. They are obviously airing the ball out more than they have all year. Had 46 pass attempts. So I think it's evolving. That's the identity. It's still evolving. I don't think there's any set thing. But the one thing I was a little bit discouraged by, just because it hasn't been the MO so far, was that 3rd and short where the interception happened. I really thought that was kind of a run situation, and they opted for pass. Neil Brown said that it was a bad call. He admitted that. But I think that was something that kind of surprised me because they have tried to establish that run.
Well, missed opportunities just in general was just a story for West Virginia. Like you said, Keenan, they've showed a lot of things. Obviously, they struggled with the run, then they got the run game going. And then against Texas, against kind of a depleted secondary, you saw them take more chances down the field. Austin Kendall's 3 of 5, 114 yards, a touchdown. Also had that interception that could have been caught by Sam James. I know some of you said it could have been thrown a little bit better, but I mean, at the end of the day, it was an interception. So yeah, when you talk about their identity, they can show different things, but I think it's good though too that they're not married to just one system. They're not married to just being a passing team. They're not married to just being a rushing team. It has its benefits, kind of being able to show both. But at the same time, at the end of the day, they have to be more consistent in those areas.
I think the thing I'm excited for is in the future. What he can do when he gets more of his players in the scheme, or when some of these young players grow up.
Next question, recruiting. Do you think Tykees Crawford will become a Mountaineer, and if so, will he be playing immediately as a freshman?
I'm going to go ahead and answer the second part, no, because I never say a true freshman offensive lineman is ever going to play. This is a 4-star offensive lineman from Texas, currently committed to Arkansas, Tykees Crawford. He's going to visit West Virginia. The plan is to take an official. Does that mean West Virginia's going to land him? I don't know. At this stage, I think they've got a good shot. I've talked to people that believe they have a good shot. The one team that seems to be creeping around that could present the most trouble is LSU. And if they really get involved, that might make things tough. But right now, West Virginia or Arkansas seem to be kind of the picks. And I think it's maybe 50-50, maybe a little bit less.
It's one thing I do want to point out, though. You mentioned, you're never going to come out and say right away whether or not a true freshman is going to play in the offensive line. Matt Moore did say yesterday with there's a couple true freshmen, Brandon Yates, Parker Moore. He was asked about just where John Hughes kind of fits. Is he the backup right guard? Is he the backup right tackle? Well, he's actually said Parker Moore, could fit, could be the number 2 guy right there at right tackle. Now he doesn't want to play him, but he's the most physically ready to play at that position. He doesn't want to play him right away, just now, not just yet, just because he's still a little big-eyed, still kind of learning. But he doesn't want to play him right now because if you have to burn, he doesn't want to come under that chance to maybe burn their red shirt later. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to pick out 4 games there, kind of at the end of the season to prepare. Say, hey, you're going to play. Let's prepare you to play. So just wanted to add that. That's something I forgot to add to the last video. But last question here: top 5 most wanted for the 2021 recruiting class.
This is tough. I think Christian Veilleux, number 1. Veilleux, quarterback, the Canadian quarterback. He is really good. From all the guys I've seen in camp this past summer, probably the most impressive. Very accurate. He's big, gets the ball out, does pretty much everything West Virginia wants in a quarterback. Is this my top 5 or their top 5 or kind of a combination? I put all 3 of the in-state guys, all 3 of the big in-state guys. Zakai Lawton, Wyatt from Spring Valley, and then of course Isaiah Johnson from Bluefield. I think all 3 of those guys would be major boosts to the program, not only for the fact they're good football players, but the fact they're in-state guys and you want to keep those guys home. And then a 5th, you could go anywhere. Caden Prather, who visited this past weekend, a wide receiver, he's really good. They're in on some offensive linemen, some defensive linemen. Got a lot of updates right now on 2021 guys on the site as well, from guys that visited this past weekend, guys that plan to visit. So I think that's the class, though, that you need to watch. Don't sleep on the 2020 class. I think it still has potential to be, close to top 30 if they land who they want to land. But that 2021 class will really be the full 2 years, year and a half, where they were able to develop relationships and really get after guys.
That's all the questions.
All right, it's time to make our predictions. And I went last week, Pat, first, so I'm going to give you the floor.
Can I tell you after the game?
I don't think it works that way.
Whoever scores more points is going to win this game. Just kidding. I've been going back and forth all week about this. I really feel like this is a big response game for West Virginia. Coming off, they had 1 loss prior to Texas. They were able to respond greatly after that loss to Missouri with a great game against NC State. I want to take a chance and say West Virginia does respond well and they get the victory against Iowa State. I'm going to go West Virginia 31-27. I picked against West Virginia a couple of years ago after they came off of that loss from Oklahoma State. They played Iowa State at home. I picked Iowa State to win that game.
It's haunted you.
And West Virginia ended up coming out on top. But I think at West Virginia, the keys to the game for me for West Virginia would be to start out hot. Obviously, we mentioned Iowa State has only allowed 3 points in first quarter so far this season. They got to get off the ground running. Got to contain Brock Purdy in the run game, and got to get, like I said, get their run game going and be able to stop the run. And one of the biggest things against Texas, as I mentioned earlier, got to capitalize on opportunities. We saw that against Texas. They had chances. After Texas missed a field goal, Austin Kendall throws an interception on the first play. They got a possession on Texas 49. Austin Kendall threw another interception. Then they also had that opportunity after the Keith Washington interception to tie the game at 21, and then they were only able to get a field goal. So capitalize on those opportunities, I feel like, is going to be big for West Virginia this game. But I really do think Neil Brown, this staff, with their attention to detail, they're going to have this team ready. They're going to have this team fired up and ready to go. I think West Virginia gets a 4-point win.
Everything tells me that Iowa State probably should win this football game. But spoiler alert, if you've read the 3-2-1 this week, I think West Virginia's going to win. I don't know why. I just have that feeling. I think sometimes it's the matchup. It's a lot of different things. But West Virginia plays well at home, and I think the crowd's going to be into it. I think it's going to be a game similar to a few years ago that you'd mentioned Iowa State, that West Virginia probably shouldn't have won that game, but they found a way to do it. And I think that Brock Purdy is the key to this game. If West Virginia is able to frustrate him, at least knock them off rhythm, and keep them from getting 7.1 yards per play, I think they stand a pretty good chance. I think that with the preparation they've been doing in the offseason to get ready for this game, I think they'll have a plan for the defense. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's had a lot of success. I do think that they're going to find a way to get it done. I think West Virginia is going to win this game 38-35. It's going to be close, but West Virginia's going to find a way. And hey, for all those out there that said we've been picking against West Virginia, we picked them, and we picked, okay? So there you go, and that's independent. We did not discuss this, so thank you for tuning in once again. I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't already, if it's the first time watching this, go ahead and hit subscribe. Join the channel. It's a lot of fun. We do this a couple times a week. Continue to develop, continue to grow it. But thanks for tuning in, guys. We had a lot of fun. We always do. And this has been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.